الرحمن. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد, to proceed, we continue reading today from the book of Shaykh al-Allama Abdul Rahman ibn Nasir al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, that is entitled Ad-Din al-Sahih Yahullu Jami' al-Mashakil, that the correct religion is a solution for all problems, or the correct religion solves all problems. Continuing with the first problem, which is the greatest problem of mankind, which is identifying the correct system of belief and practice of religion. Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, after speaking about those that worshipped idols and the creation and so on and so forth, he says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ طَائِفَةٌ ادَّعَتِ الْفَلْسَفَةَ وَالْعِلْمَ بِالْمَعْقُولَاتِ, that from amongst mankind are a faction that claims philosophy and knowledge of logic. They claim to have learned philosophy or be skilled with philosophy, to have knowledge of logic. فَجَاءَتْ بِأَكْبَرِ الضَّلَالَاتِ وَأَعْظَمِ الْمُحَالَاتِ, and they produce the greatest misguidance and the worst fallacies as belief, like the atheist and many of the disbelievers who are agnostic or who just piece together religions and cults and so on and so forth that suit their different agendas and their philosophies and whatever, that they bring about the greatest statements of misguidance and the most impossible of fallacies and false matters. فَجَحَدَتْ الرَّبَّ الْعَظِيمِ وَأَنْكَرَتْ وُجُودَهُ. He said, and so they have denied Rabb al-Azim, the existence of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. They have rejected the Lord and they have negated His existence. فَضْلًا عَنَ الْإِيمَانِ بِالرُّسُلِ وَالْكُتُبِ وَأُمُورَ الْغَيْبِ, let alone not believing in the messengers of Allah and the scriptures revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the affairs of the unseen. Because it was explained before, there are people who believe in some of the scriptures and reject others. They believe in some of the messengers and reject others. And they are al-kafiruna haqqa. This is what we read from last week in the statement of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, and the explanation of the Shaykh for the statement of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala as regards those who believe in some prophets and some scriptures are rejecting others. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ حَقًّا. These ones, هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ حَقًّا, they are the disbelievers in truth. They are the disbelievers in truth. So how much more for people who claim that they don't believe at all in the existence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, let alone rejecting all of the messengers and all of the scriptures and all of the beliefs that were mentioned in those scriptures, the belief in Allah and the belief in the Day of Judgment and so on and so forth. And they reject all morality and anything that is a value that is based upon revelation. They work their best to try to destroy and try to change and so on and so forth. They are the worst of the creation. As we mentioned before, some of the people, they believe that the first of the atheists was Pharaoh. When Pharaoh, he claimed that he was, when he said that I am Rabbukum Mula'ala, yani that I am your Lord the Most High. That I am your Lord the Most High. People thought that he was claiming to be Allah. Tabarak wa ta'ala. What is correct according to many of the scholars is that the Egyptians, that they worshipped a hierarchy of gods, as we mentioned before. They worshipped a hierarchy of gods. They believed in the ultimate creator. And they assigned him different names and so on and so forth. And then they believed that he had daughters and sons and so on and so forth. There were demigods. And that the royalty, and that Pharaoh and the family of Pharaoh, or Pharaoh himself, was the only one that was allowed to worship that level of God. And that level, and the intermediaries between the creator and the creation, were only Pharaoh was able to worship them. And everybody else had to worship Pharaoh. And people had to worship Pharaoh. So Pharaoh wasn't even that misguided. Pharaoh wasn't even that misguided as the atheist philosophers of today. Wallahu musta'an. And this is a serious affair when we live in a secular humanist society, and where every affair of belief and every affair of morality and so on and so forth is being contested and challenged and so on and so forth on a day-to-day basis. And that we reject what comes from the kuffar of these affairs, and that we don't lend ear to them, and that we don't confuse ourselves with debating with them and the likes of these affairs, but rather we believe in Allah and we believe in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we don't engage in the affairs of disputing with the kuffar about their atheism and their disbelief, so on and so forth. We just call to what we are upon. We explain to them what we are upon, and we know that it is from the abwab al-dalala, and it is from the doorways of misguidance for people that are not knowledgeable, people that are weak in their knowledge, that don't have al-muhalat al-ilmiyah, that don't have the scholastic wherewithal and fortitude to be able to argue with these people, to debate with them. It was reported from the scholars that Jahm ibn Safwan, the Imam of the Jahmiyyah al-Mu'attilah, who rejected the attributes of Allah Tabarak wa ta'ala, as well as the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Jahm ibn Safwan, that what caused him to go astray was debating with the philosophers in his time from the disbelievers. And he debated with the philosophers in his time from the disbelievers, and they confronted him with a doubt that he didn't know how to answer. They confronted him with a doubt he didn't know how to answer. حَتَّى تَرَكَ الصَّلَاةَ 40 لَيْلَةً, until he abandoned the salah for 40 nights. And you mean 40 days and nights. He abandoned his salah, على وجه الشك, because he had doubt about his religion. He stopped praying for 40 nights. Because he was confronted with a doubt by the disbelievers, and he didn't know how to answer. He wasn't a person of knowledge. He wasn't a person who had strong comprehension and understanding and the likes of these affairs. And so it is without a doubt from the things that cause a great deal of misguidance. And many of the deviant sects fell into their deviations as regards the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the Mu'tazila and from the later what was called the Islamic philosophers and the likes. They fell into many of their deviations because of debating with the kuffar in the east and in the west, and so on and so forth. And so Shaykh Asadi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that these people, they have denied Ar-Rabb al-Azim, the tremendous Lord Tabarak wa ta'ala, and they have denied his wujud, and his existence. فضلا عن الإيمان of Allah, and they only did so out of oppressiveness and seeking loftiness and highness in the earth and out of arrogance. فكذبوا بعلوم الرسل وما دلت عليه الكتب المنزلة من عند الله واستكبروا عنها بما عرفوا من العلوم الطبيعية وتوابعها. He said, and so they denied the knowledge that came to the messengers and that which was proven by the books that were revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. واستكبروا عنها بما عرفوا من العلوم الطبيعية وتوابعها. And they arrogantly shunned this on account of what they knew of worldly science and what relates to it. You find that today, even amongst the Muslims, people who think that they are qualified to speak about affairs of religion because they have a secular education. They have a secular education. They have a master's degree or a PhD in medicine or in chemistry or in whatever. And so they think that they are any knowledgeable people with stronger minds and that they are from the elite and the rest of the people are common folk and the rest of the people are simpletons, simple-minded, so on and so forth, and they have more ability to understand the religion of Allah even though they have not studied it. And they start to interject their opinions into the religion of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. He said, and so the philosophers, they rejected ما عرفوا من العلوم الطبيعية وتوابعها. They shunned this on account of what they know of worldly science and what relates to it. And they rejected our reality. وأنكروا جميع الحقائق إلا ما أدركوه بحواسهم وتجاربهم القاصرة الضيقة بالنسبة إلى علوم الأنبياء. And they rejected our reality to the exception of what they could perceive with their physical senses, with the five senses. Any sight, sound, smell, touch, and the other one. So it's been a long day. And there's a general principle to the scholars that he mentioned. And we said last week that there are three ways by which knowledge is gotten, any type of knowledge amongst mankind. The first is by the five senses. And a person knows something because they perceive something. But even the five senses can err. As the scholars, they say a person can go on the 29th of Sha'ban and he could squint until he thinks that he saw the hilal. Right? He thinks he saw the hilal. I saw the hilal. It's mustahil ya akhi. It's impossible to see the hilal tonight. I'm sure I saw it. A person, they can think that they heard something and they listen very attentively and closely and they hear some noises and they're for sure that they heard something they didn't hear. Even the senses can be erroneous. So a person can err in that which he thought he saw. How many people narrate Allahul musta'an wa ila Allahil mushtaka? That's why we say, as people responsible in our communities, please don't narrate. If you ask a question for yourself to us, don't narrate what you think you thought you might have heard or saw us say to other people, because this is where the khalat occurs. This is where the confusion occurs. I heard the brothers say kada. Really? Lasta min ruwati. You're not from my narrators, ya akhi. Right? And a person, they can hear something and they can. Because when you hear something and you convey it, what are you conveying? Are you conveying the words or are you conveying the meanings? What you understood from the person. You're conveying the meanings, right? Unless you have that type of memory. Or you memorize word for word what a person said, so on and so forth. So people, they do that. They hear something and then they put a little spin on it. Or they put their understanding on it, so on and so forth, what they took out of what was said, and they convey it to another person. Who conveys it to another person? Which causes confusion and the likes of that. So you see that people, even with their hawas, and even with their senses, that they can err, and what they heard, and what they saw, and what they thought they smelt, and so on and so forth, and those sorts of things. And so this is one of the ways by which knowledge is gotten. The other way is through al-ma'qulat, that which is logical. The things that are logical, right? The things that are logical, and it's where a person, and he has sensed something, and then they connect cause and effect together, right? So it started with the hawas, right? Because إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ, knowledge only comes about by learning, right? People don't get ilham anymore. People aren't getting revelation and inspiration and so on and so forth. And so what is ma'qul, and what is logical, is a conclusion that you reached based upon something that you physically experienced. Goes back to the first thing. Like fire burns, ice, cold weather freezes. You connect cause and effect together. It's called ma'qul. 2 + 2 = 4. 3 × 2 = 6. That's logic, right? And those are logical conclusions a person reached. Not necessarily because of something that they physically experienced with the five senses directly, but because of the conclusion connecting one thing to another thing. So those are called ma'qulat. And then the third thing is authentic information from a trustworthy source. Authentic information from a trustworthy source. And so what information is more authentic than what Allah revealed? Tabarak wa ta'ala kitaban wa sunnatan. And what source is more trustworthy than the prophets and the messengers of Allah, alayhimus salatu wasalam? They were the most trustworthy of their people, and the highest of people and the loftiest of people in character. So the prophets and the messengers, they were given, the highest of character and the highest of status and trust and confidence of their people, so on and so forth. So when they came to them with this information, the person la yakdhib fi hadith an-nas, who doesn't lie in regards what he says to the people, he's not going to lie upon Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. He's not going to lie upon Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. And so these are the three ways by which knowledge is gotten. So the person who limits knowledge to that which is experienced by the five senses, then there's a general principle that says, ليس عدم العلم العلم وليس عدم العلم علم بالعدم. Not knowing something to be the case is not the same as knowing that something is not the case. Right? Not knowing something to be the case is jahl, is what you're ignorant of. And jahl is not ilm. So a person cannot say, because they have not physically experienced something or seen something, that they reject an affair that has come through other means of authentic knowledge, like the transmissions and the reports that were sent to the messengers alayhimus salatu wasalam, and particularly what was revealed to the messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because the adillah and the barahin al-aqliyah, the logical evidence for the authenticity of the messengership of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and that which is known by the Muslims and by the disbelievers alike as regards the historical method of authenticating the statements of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala and the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and how the Quran has been preserved and how the Sunnah has been preserved, is that which is beyond what can be denied and that which can be rejected. And so when they say that they reject everything that does not conform with their hawas and their tajarib, and their senses and their tajarib and the experiences and so on and so forth, and we say that you have only admitted to your ignorance. But rather what you don't know is not the same as what you claim to know. It's not, you're not knowing the truthfulness of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, because you haven't with insaf, with objectivity. You haven't with objectivity looked at the evidences for the fact that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala exists, and that He is described with the attributes of perfection on account of which He deserves to be worshipped, and the authenticity of the call of the prophets and the messengers alayhimus salatu wassalam, and how it benefits the society. It's not like the messenger just appeared today and the people aren't sure if what he's calling to is going to work or not. The history of Islam, when the Muslims were holding fast to what the messenger was upon alayhi salatu wassalam, they were in a state of izdihar, in a state of ruqi, in a state of loftiness and progress and so on and so forth. And when they left off the teachings of the messengers and they started to bridge the gap between Islam and Kufr and give matters that they took from the disbelievers Islamic labels, and replace aspects of Islam with aspects that they had took from the people of Jahiliyyah, then the Muslims were punished by Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. And the situation of the Muslims today is from the evidences of the truthfulness of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in many regards, and from the greatest regard, the fact that the Muslims today are extremely weak as they have ever been. But the religion is spreading very, very quickly all throughout the earth. The religion is spreading very, very quickly all throughout the earth because of the strength of Islam, and because of the power of the message of what was in the book of Allah and what is in the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, and so they rejected all reality to the exception of what they could perceive with their physical senses and experiences, which themselves were tight and limited when compared to the knowledge of the prophets and the messengers alayhim salatu wassalam. فَعَبَرُوا الطَّبِيعَةِ وَجَعَلُوهَا أَكْبَرَ هَمِّهِمْ وَمَبْلَغَ عِلْمِهِمْ. And so they worshiped nature, and they made nature and the things of this world their greatest aspiration and the extent of their knowledge. وَانْدَفَعُوا وَرَاءَ مَا تَقْتَضِيهِ طَبَاعِيُهُمْ. And they plunged behind what their natural dispositions dictated. وَلَمْ يَتَقَيَّدُوا بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الشَّرَاعِيَ الدِّينِيَةِ وَلَا الْأَخْلَاقِ الْإِنسَانِيَةِ فَصَارَتِ الْبَهَائِمُ أَحْسَنَ حَالًا مِنْهُمْ. And they plunged behind what their natures, what their natural dispositions dictated, and what felt, and what was in conformity to what they wanted to do. And they didn't limit themselves to the laws of the religion or to moral human character to the extent that animals became better off than them. but they became more base, more debased, more humiliated than animals. More humiliated than animals. And this is something that is a terrifying affair when you look from the time of the French Revolution, which is not that really that long ago, just a couple of 100 years ago, which was a secular humanist revolution, which was the attempted deposing of religion and religious-based morality with scientism. And it's not science, scientism. And it's the religion of science, the belief in science, that nature created everything and there is no limit to its capability, and that mankind can become gods by harnessing nature. This has reached a crescendo today that has never seen before, of the transhumanist movement and so on and so forth, and the people saying that we can speed up evolution where we become godlike and so on and so forth through technology, through modern day technology, where soon we will be transhuman. We used to be human, but now we are godlike and we will be able to know everything and live forever. And the likes of these things, which are the promises of the shaitan, all the way going back to the garden, that by rejecting what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala ordered and disobeying Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, people will live forever, and other affairs, and they have always been called to, by the occultist and so on and so forth, people claiming to have the fountain of youth and the tree of life, and through witchcraft and sorcery and so on and so forth, and the belief in reincarnation, and that people will live forever, and the likes of these affairs. These things have been masked with just different statements and any agendas of the people today. And it is an affair that is very terrifying, and the purpose of the entirety of it, as they have said from that time until this time, is to make people controllable and predictable. Because that's what you need in science. In order to do a science experiment, you need to have a controlled environment, a predictable environment, so that you can get the outcome that you want. But people, they are extremely unpredictable, and they don't like to be controlled. People don't like to be controlled. People don't like to have you place unnecessary rules upon them. Some people will disobey you just because you gave them a rule, even if the rule was good for them. But because of the fact that you told them to do something, even if they never wanted to do that thing, they'll do it just to spite you, right? A majority of people are like that. And so they want to make people, by changing their beliefs and changing their values and changing their entire mentalities, controllable and predictable. And this is what they wrote all the way from the time of the French Revolution, all the way up until the time of Charles Darwin and the eugenicist movement and so on and so forth. Up until today, the scientists are still upon the same agenda, and the sociologists, the anthropologists, the different categories and the different genres of the scientism movement, that has swept across the earth, that the people think is knowledge, and they think that this is secular knowledge and so on and so forth, while it is nothing but flowery speech to fool the people and to try to control the people and to change the morality of the people. You see the people today, everything is logical. If you say that being homosexual is disgusting and nasty, that's just gross. The people, they will say that's an illogical statement. Why would you make that statement? That's unfair. That's unwise. That's this, that's that. What is logical is what agrees to their whims and their desires, and what is illogical is what opposes their whims and their desires. This is what we are dealing with today, and it is at a level that mankind has never seen before in the history of mankind. Wallahu musta'an. So they have made this the extent of their knowledge and the greatest aspiration that they have. And they have plunged behind what their natural dispositions dictated, and they did not limit themselves to the law of religion or moral human character to the extent that animals became better than them. The Shaykh said, فَصَارَتِ الْبَهَائِمُ أَحْسَنَ حَالًا مِنْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ نَضَبَتْ مِنْهُمُ الْأَخْرَاقِ وَانْدَفَعُوا وَرَاءَ الشَّهَوَاتِ الْبَهِيمِيَّةِ. For certainly these people became void of morality. They became void of morality. And especially the older generation, if you were to ask the people how much has changed in the world from the time that you were young up until today, if you ask your grandmother's generation, or your great-grandmother, if you had a great-grandmother, you ask her what things were like. That's what you hear from the older generation, how much things have changed. How much things have changed. People are not the same as they used to be. People are not even close to the same as they used to be. And one of the biggest things that did that was drugs, which is also a science experiment, but that's a whole other bag of chips. فَإِنَّهُمْ نَضَبَتْ مِنْهُمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Rarely these people, they became void of morality, void of character. As our scholars, they said, as the Shaykh Rabi Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he said about the Westerners who drew those disgusting caricatures and the cartoons about the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they drew the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a donkey, as a dog, with a bomb in his turban, so on and so forth. The Shaykh Rabi' Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he said, as for the West, they don't know anything about morality except for the word itself. The only thing they know about morality is the word. But other than that, it's not evident in them. They don't have any morality. And their moral code is pragmatism. That's what they call the American virtue, is pragmatism. Pragmatism is not what is right and wrong, but what works and what doesn't work. What works for me, what works for you. The ends justify the means, the Machiavellian principle, the ends justify the means, as the principle that was called to by John Dewey. By John Dewey, who was the father of modern day education and the modern day public school system, and so on and so forth, that designed the curriculum from the elementary level all the way to the doctorate level. And pragmatism, what works, what doesn't work. And what is good for the economy, what is good for the political system, so on and so forth. Not what is right, not what is wrong, but what works and what doesn't work according to them. Allah al-Musta'an. So this is the reality of the affair. They have no morality. They don't believe in morality. And even the ones who claim that they believe in morality, as we tell the brothers who want to take on dawah projects and marry Christian women, right? We say to the brothers that our scholars, they say that the chaste Christian woman is a woman who does not commit adultery or fornication, nor does she approve of others doing it. Allahu Akbar. Because a person who is pleased with something, who sees there's nothing wrong with something, is like the person who is themselves doing it. And we say you would be lucky if you could say that. It would be difficult to find a disbelieving woman or a disbeliever in general who doesn't approve of homosexuality in this country, let alone adultery and fornication and so on and so forth, right? So the affair is like that. The people who claim to have morality, the fact that they approve, that they say we have to have a tasamuh, we just have to accept everybody for how they are, right? And we can't feel any particular way. Now, of course, we're not going to oppress anybody. Nobody oppresses anybody. It takes law and the law into their own hands and so on and so forth. But to say that we just have to accept things for how they are, and people with their munkarat and so on and so forth, as they say, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That's a statement of Aleister Crowley, the most evil man in the world in the last generation. Aleister Crowley, the devil worshipper, right? The one who was the mentor of the Beatles and the mentor of many academics in the West and so on and so forth. This disgusting individual. And so their logos that they call to, their mottos that they call to, rather, were these sorts of statements. Do whatever you want to do so long as it's not hurting anybody else. Allahu Akbar. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. The bahaim, the dawab, as comes in the hadith, الرجل الفاجر يستريح منه العباد والبلاد والشجر والدواب. When a wicked man dies, everything is relieved. The earth is relieved, the shrubs and the trees are relieved, the people are relieved, and the animals are relieved. Everything is relieved that he has died. There's no such thing as do what you want as long as it's not hurting anybody else. Corruption has appeared at land and sea because of what the hands of the people have earned. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he said in I'lam al-Waqi'een, he said just the issue of free mixing between the sexes was enough for Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala to destroy entire nations in the past. Entire nations were destroyed for that type of behavior, let alone what the people see today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from his punishment. He says, so the animals became better than them, to the point that these people, were void of character. وَانْدَفَعُوا وَرَاءَ شَهَوَاتِ الْبَهِيمِيَّةِ, and they plunged behind their animalistic lust. فَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ غَايَةٌ يَرْجُونَهَا وَلَا نِهَايَةٌ يَطْلُبُونَهَا. And so they had no purpose which they hope for, ultimate end, an objective that they saw after. They don't have a belief in the hereafter, a belief, a fear of the punishment of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, and a hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the point that many academics, they claim that the belief in hell is the cause of many psychological illnesses, and they say that believing in the hereafter itself is a psychological illness. They say believing in the hereafter is a psychological illness. Allahu Akbar. So this is the reality of the world in which we live. He said, فَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ غَايَةٌ يَرْجُونَهَا وَلَا نِهَايَةٌ يَطْلُبُونَها. And they didn't believe that they had a purpose for which they could hope for, an ultimate inner objective that they sought after. They said this is the cause of al-qalaq, of a person being unsettled, of a person never being able to find happiness, that he doesn't know where he came from or why he is here. A person just living a purposeless life. And alhamdulillah, many of us who at one point were not Muslim, especially, without a doubt, can relate to that. And you see how many of the kuffar, whether they're rich or poor, no matter what their situation out, are taking themselves out. They're taking themselves out, committing suicide, so on and so forth. Wallah al-musta'an. And the people that are living purposeless lives, lives where they have no real connection to anybody else except in a very phony way. They have no relationships with anybody else except in a very superficial way, and so on and so forth. And they objectify everybody, and they only deal with the people that they deal with according to their own whims and their own selfish ambitions, and so on and so forth. He said, وَقَالُوا مَا هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا وَمَا يُحْلِكُنَا إِلَى الدَّهْرِ. As was stated by Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala about them, they say this is nothing but the life of this world. We live and we die. We die and we live, and nothing causes us to perish except for the time. وَصَارَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ عَلَى شِرْكِهِمْ وَكُفْرِهِمْ أَحْسَنَ حَالًا مِنْهُمْ. And the people who worship multiple gods, who believed in the Creator, but they worship Jesus, or they worship Maryam, or they worship St. Paul, or they worship whatever they worship besides Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, that these people who worship multiple gods, and he found themselves in a better situation than these people. And that their situation was better than these atheists, these philosophers, these agnostics, or whatever they call themselves. He said, وَأَقَلُّ شَرًّا مِنْهُمْ بِكَثِيرٍ. And they were much less evil than them. وَالْعَجَبُ الْكَثِيرُ أَنْ هَذَا الْمَذْهَبِ الْخَبِيثِ جَرَفَ بِتَيَارِهِ فِي الْأَوْقَاتِ الْأَخِيرَةِ جُمْهُورُ الْبَشَرِ. He said, and it is astonishing, it is really astonishing that this wretched belief system swept away a majority of humanity in its current and more recent times. This is something that was unheard of in the past. And it was unheard of just 100 years ago, 200 years ago. It was something that was very rare, and it started to gain preeminence, particularly after the world wars. After the world wars. But even then, the people, they came with Eastern mysticism and so on and so forth. That's what they gave the academics. They gave the academics some LSD and some PCP and so on and so forth. And they said, tap into your spiritual side. Tap into your spiritual side and believe in these different Eastern mystical religious systems, so on and so forth, like Buddhism, Shintoism, whatever. The belief in the yin yang and this, that, and the third. And they came with these sorts of affairs. The majority of which did not really have a core belief in a creator. They didn't have a core belief in a creator. And in order to push people towards what I call nature religions. Nature religions. And this goes into what we hear today of the people, they use certain things that may have some degree of reality. That the people are destroying the earth. And we need to save Mother Nature. We're destroying the earth that was given to us, that we're destroying Mother Nature, so on and so forth. And so we need to lower our standards of living. And we need to not have so many children. Now, that's a big one. We need to decrease the number of children that we have. That's why they push homosexuality and other family structures, as they call them, right? To try to decrease the number of the people. And they push these religions upon the people in order to push certain agendas that were within them that go into their scientific agenda of decreasing the population, decreasing productivity, so on and so forth, controlling people so that people don't get out of hand and whatnot. He said, and so a majority of people have been swept up in this current and more modern times. And as our scholars, they say that the cause of atheism after Christianity, as Ibn al-Qayyim, he said that the greatest cause of atheism spreading was the illogical nature of Christianity. Christianity was so ridiculous to so many people that when they had the option to abandon it, they abandoned it with a grudge. They abandoned Christianity with a grudge, and anything that had anything to do with morality or right and wrong and so on and so forth, they waged war against. They waged war against. So this is from the greatest cause of atheism spreading. But the two greatest vehicles of atheism spreading in the time in which we live is the education system and the media. The education system and the media. Whatever the case, he said, لِضَعْفَ الدِّينِ وَقِلَّةِ الْبَصِيرَةِ. He said many people were swept away by this wave and this trend because of the weakness of religiosity amongst the people and because of a lack of foresight and insight. ولما وضعت له الأمم القوية الحبائل والمصائد التي هلك بها الخلق. He said, and because of the snares and the traps that were laid down by the powerful nations, on account of which many of the creation perished. He said, أما الدين الإسلامي فقد أخرج الخلق من ظلمات الجهل والكفر والظلم والعدوان وأصناف الشرور إلى نور العلم والإيمان واليقين والعدل والرحمة وجميع الخيرات. As for the Islamic religion, then it expelled the creation from the darkness of ignorance, disbelief, oppression, transgression, and a host of evils into the light of knowledge, faith, certainty, justice, mercy, and all good. As Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala said, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Indeed, Allah conveyed a weighty favor upon the believers, inasmuch as that He sent amongst them a messenger from their own selves, reciting His ayat to them, and yuzakkihim, meaning developing them and purifying them, purifying and developing them. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ, and teaching them the book and the hikmah. وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبَلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ, even though beforehand they had been in manifest error. And so Islam, when they were the ummah, when it was holding fast to the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I had a kingdom that spread within 100 years of the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the borders of China all the way to the west of Africa, all the way up to the top of the Caucasus Mountains, from Bab al-Abwab, Derband in Azerbaijan and Armenia, and all the way to the borders of Constantinople, which was the capital of Christendom at that time. And they took the lands of the Persians and the lands of the Romans and Byzantines and so on and so forth, and they took control of the entirety of the north part of Africa, from northeast to northwest Africa, and they judged by the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the nations of the world entered into the religion of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in droves, and they built a civilization that the world has never seen the likes of before and will never see the likes of thereafter. And this is something that is tremendous. As the Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions in other writings that this is from the way of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in dealing with the creation. And that while the Muslims were adhering to the tenets of the religion and the values of the religion and the beliefs of the religion and so on and so forth, they were in a state of progress. They were in a state of any development and growing and so on and so forth, and expansion. And when they left that off, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala punished them. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He punished them. As was stated by Shaykh Muhammad Taqiyuddin Hilali, he said that the more the Muslims, he said that the more the Europeans increased in the knowledge and the civilization that they learned from the Muslims and took from the Muslims, the more the Muslims increased in the backwardness and ignorance that they had learned from the Europeans. And so, things went like this. Things went like this. The Muslims, they decreased while the Europeans took what they had learned from the Muslims, and they only were able to progress when they what? When they abandoned their religion and threw it behind their backs. As long as they had their religion, they were in the most oppressive dark ages that the world has ever seen. They were in a very oppressive state, so on and so forth. And when they abandoned their religion, then they were able to progress financially. They were able to progress in their dunya. They were able to progress in a material sense, as they believe that they have progressed because they abandoned their religion. As comes in the hadith of Uqbat ibn Amr, he said that when you see Allah given to His slave from the things of the dunya what they want while they are disobeying Allah, then know that it is Allah leading them slowly but surely to their destruction. It's the reality of the affair. And the people, they believe that by increasing in disobedience and disbelief, that they would progress, that they would get everything that they ever wanted in this world. And so Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He tested them. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He tested them. And because the creation are a test for one another. The creation are a test for one another. And when the Ummah returns back to obedience to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, learning and teaching the Sunnah and practicing the Sunnah and being patient upon that, then they will have restored to them what they lost because of their disobedience and negligence. Shaykh, he said likewise, in this verse that he quotes here, Surah Al-Nahl, and he is what some of the scholars say is the most comprehensive verse in the book of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. It's the most comprehensive verse in the book of Allah, meaning as regards the ahkam al-shar'iyyah, as regards the rulings of the sharia. And this verse that is mentioned here, verse number 90 in Surah Al-Nahl, and he is a verse that summarizes all of the rulings of the religion. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ يَعِظُكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, he said, indeed Allah orders with justice and ihsan and kind treatment of the creation, وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, and giving to your kinsmen, and he spending upon giving to helping your kinsmen. And ذِي الْقُرْبَى, the scholars they say is everybody related to you going back to your fourth grandparent. And he manajtama ali shakhsin fi jaddih al-rabi', everybody related to you going back to your great grandfather. Allah has ordered with kind treatment of them and helping them out when they are in need and so on and so forth. He said, وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ, and he warns against and he forbids against al-fahsha, and which is in the majority of instances in every place except for once in the Quran, which means fornication and adultery, and what follows it of homosexuality and the likes of those affairs, al-fahsha. There's one other meaning for fahsha in the book of Allah in general, even though fahsha is every statement and action tajawaza bihi al-abdu haddah, and that a person has exceeded the bounds in, because the kalam can be fahish, and a person's speech can be profane. Speech can be profane, right? Fahsha is profanity in general, but fahsha generally means adultery and fornication. And in the other places it's used in the Quran, الشيطان يعيدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. Indeed, the shaitan threatens you with poverty and orders you with fahsha. In this case, it means bukhul, as is stated by Abdullah bin Abbas. But fahsha in general, it means lewdness and a sexual nature and so on and so forth. Wal munkar, munkar is that which is forbidden in the religion and is deemed to be disgusting. By the nature of people are naturally averse to it. And that which is rejected by the intellect. The intellect sees that the thing is harmful or of no benefit, so on and so forth. And so it is rejected by the intellect. This is the meaning of munkar, that which is deemed to be evil by the religion and the intellect and the natural dispositions of the people. Wal baghi, and wanton transgression against other people, oppressing other people, violating the rights of other people. Ya'idukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, he admonishes you so that you may be of those tadhakkarun, who take heed, tadhakkarun, tikraran, and take heed over and over again. Remember. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, he said, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. Today I have completed your religion for you, and I have finalized my favor upon you, and I'm pleased for you with Islam as your religion. Likewise, the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا. In Surah Al-An'am, verse number 115, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, he said, and the word of your Lord has been fulfilled in truth and in justice. Surah Al-An'am, verse 115. So the religion is truth and justice, because everything in the religion is two categories of things. There's not anything in the religion except that it is either akhbar or it is ahkam. It is either information and reports or it is rulings. So as regards the information and reports, what Allah has told us about himself and the unseen of the past, the present, or the future, anything that Allah has told us of information, that it is sidq, that it is true. And everything that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has legislated of ahkam, of laws, and it is adl, then it is justice, right? If a person said, Akhi, go wash your hands, you couldn't say to him, you lied, right? If a person, you don't say about an order and instruction that that's true or that's false. If somebody told you to do something, right? So ahkam, they're not described with truth or falsehood in general. And as much as that, they're described with truth and falsehood because Allah informed us and ordered us with them, and so, they are truly from Allah, without a doubt. They can be described with truth and so on and so forth. But in general, ahkam, they are, described with justice or injustice. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has judged, then it is the greatest of justice. So if a person heard something from the religion, anything from the religion, and they knew that it was a part of the religion, and they said that it wasn't fair, then that will be kufrun akbar mukhrij min al-millah. That's major kufr that removes a person from Islam, right? So people have to be careful when they are dealing with new Muslims, when they are dealing with any woman that they marry, right? And they get into disputes with them, and the sister, she's been Muslim for about 2.5 hours, right? You just gave her shahada, so on and so forth, and you start giving her too much at one time. First off, you shouldn't be marrying no woman like that, right? I know in some communities they won't even perform marriages inside of the masjid to people until a woman has been Muslim for at least a year and has attended a number of classes, and so on and so forth, new shahada classes, those sorts of things, let alone all the other screens that need to take place and the blood work and those sorts of things, whatever, right? But we've seen it in the past. People, they have somebody that is either not from the Salafi community, and so the Islam is kind of guesswork and patched together, so on and so forth. They don't know much about it, and you give them something from the religion. And we've actually heard sisters say things like, that's not fair. You quote an ayah from the Quran, and sisters say stuff like, that's not fair. Allahu Akbar. Right? Or you say something from the religion, and the sister says, I don't believe that. That's not what I believe. Allahu Akbar. Kufrun akbar. It's a statement of major kufr. Right? So it's a serious affair. That the Muslims know that everything that has come, that's why bid'ah is what? Bid'ah is barid al-kufr. Bid'ah is the herald of kufr. It announces the approach of kufr. Why? Because the person who innovates in the religion, who makes ta'wilun batil and usul, as regards the creed of the Muslims, and he misinterprets some affairs, he understands them in a way that is not, that there's no authority for. There was not the understanding of the Messenger of Allah, the early generation, so on and so forth. He understands things in a way that's not like that. He makes ta'wilun batil, right? And if he doesn't know, he's an innovator, right? If he doesn't know in general, and he's sahib al-bid'ah. If he knows that what he says is batil, but he still says it, and iftara ala Allahi kadhiba, and he has attributed a lie to Allah, and the person who knowingly, muta'ammidan, yaftari ala Allahi kadhiban, and he knowingly attributes a lie to Allah, has committed kufrun akbar. So the entire religion, it revolves around these two things, truth and justice. Islam is truth and justice. There is no truth and justice in opposition to Islam. There is nothing that is true or nothing that is fair that opposes Islam. Anything that is true in existence or fair in existence, and the systems of the people and the the belief systems, the morality systems, the government systems, the economic systems that could be said to be true or fair, then it must be in conformity to Islam. Because anything that opposes Islam is kadhib and dhulm, right? Don't you see those? عَلَى مَنْ تَنَزَّلَ الشَّيَاطِينَ. Those that the shayateen descend upon, تَنَزَّلُوا عَلَى كُلِّ أَثَّاكٍ أَثِيمٍ. They descend upon every person who is given to much lying, a person who is a great liar and who is oppressive, a person who commits oppression against others. These are the people that the shayateen descend upon. The shayateen ride them like a Shetland pony, right? And the people of what? The people of al-kadhib and the people of al-dhulm, right? Because these are two things that are entirely contrary to the religion. Al-kadhib wal-dhulm. The entire religion is as-sidq wal-adl. The entire religion is truth and justice. And so these ayat that are being mentioned here by Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, we'll mention that we'll continue reading from next week. And they are sifatun amma. They are general descriptions that apply to everything in the religion from the beginning to the end. And they are the mahasin of Islam, the beautiful aspects of Islam by which we can explain our religion to other people. So when we hear something that comes in the book of Allah, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we try our best to understand it and to see how it brings about good for the people and establishes justice amongst the people, and how it clarifies the falsehood that people were upon in the past, and so on and so forth. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us firm upon that which is love to Him and that which pleases Him. Hada wa sallallahu wa sallam. وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.